America, we need to talk about TikTok. This platform, which has become an integral part of our children's daily lives, is not just a place for dance trends and funny videos. It has become a breeding ground for dangerous, sometimes deadly challenges that prey on the curiosity and vulnerability of young minds. If you're a parent, you might find yourself asking, how did we get here? And how can we protect our children from the very devices that were meant to connect them to the world? Let's start with the Benadryl challenge from 2020, where teenagers consumed excessive amounts of Benadryl to induce hallucinations. Hospitalizations and even death followed as young people chased after this high. Can you imagine? A simple over-the-counter medication turned into a tool of self-harm, all for a few likes and shares. What kind of world are we living in where our children are risking their lives for online validation? How many parents have to bury their children before we realize the depth of this problem? Then there's the Blackout Challenge from 2021, where participants deliberately cut off their own air supply until they lost consciousness. This isn't just dangerous, it's terrifying. Multiple deaths have been reported. Yet the challenge spread like wildfire, fueled by the thrill and the shock factor. How did we let something so horrific become a trend? And more importantly, why are our children so willing to participate in something so obviously life-threatening? Remember the Devious Lick Challenge? In 2021, students across the country began vandalizing and stealing school property, posting their loot online as trophies. This wasn't just mischief, it was criminal behavior celebrated on a global stage. Schools were left in chaos. Teachers were at their wits' end, and yet the trend spread with lightning speed. What does it say about our society when destruction and theft become a form of entertainment? 2023 brought us the chroming trend, also known as whip talk, where users inhaled toxic fumes from aerosol cans to get high. This isn't just playing with fire, it's playing with death. Chroming can cause seizures, heart attacks, and even suffocation. Yet it spread across the US, Australia, and Europe like a virus, infecting young minds with the idea that this was a fun and harmless activity. How many more lives will be lost before we realize that these trends are not just phases, but clear cries for help? Let's talk about the Angel of Death Challenge from 2023, where teenagers in Indonesia and other parts of Asia jumped in front of moving trucks, hoping the drivers would stop in time. They didn't always stop. The result? Fatalities. This challenge didn't just claim lives, it shattered families and communities. How did we reach a point where children are willing to risk their lives in such a reckless manner? And what are we as a society doing to stop it? In 2024, the beer tanning trend emerged, where users poured beer on their skin to supposedly achieve a faster tan. Dermatologists quickly warned against this practice, explaining that it increases the risk of sunburns, skin cancer, and heat stroke. Despite these warnings, the trend spread rapidly. How have we allowed beauty standards to push our youth into such dangerous behavior? When did a tan become more important than health? The Trank Challenge in 2024 took things to another level. Teenagers and young adults started taking clonazepam, a tranquilizing drug, to try and stay awake. Overdoses, mental health crises, and legal consequences followed. How can we let our children play Russian roulette with prescription drugs? Where does this end? Consider the Orbeez Challenge, where teens loaded soft water beads into airsoft guns and shot them at unsuspecting bystanders. What started as a prank quickly escalated, leading to injuries, panic, and even legal actions. Are we raising a generation that sees pain and panic as sources of entertainment? What does this say about the moral compass of our society? And then there was the Kia Challenge in 2024, which led to a surge in car thefts. Teenagers learned how to start certain car models using a USB cable, leading to a wave of vandalism and crime. This wasn't just a fun hack, it was a criminal act that spread across the country. How did we allow our children to be influenced by such destructive behavior? And what are we doing to counteract these influences? The NyQuil chicken trend from 2023 saw users cooking chicken in NyQuil, a cold medicine, and eating it. Medical experts were horrified, warning that this practice could lead to poisoning and serious respiratory issues. Yet, the trend caught on, driven by the bizarre and the outrageous. How have we allowed our children to reach a point where they are willing to poison themselves for a few minutes of online fame? In 2023, the Fire Mirror Challenge led to severe burns and property damage as teenagers sprayed flammable liquids on mirrors and set them on fire. The potential for disaster was immense, and yet the trend spread. How did we let something so obviously dangerous gain traction? And why are our children so drawn to these risky behaviors? Finally, as we look ahead to 2025, the trends predicted to emerge are expected to push the boundaries even further. What new horrors await us in the digital world? How can we protect our children from these invisible threats that lurk behind every screen? As we move into 2025, the predictions for new TikTok trends are both terrifying and sobering. Based on the patterns we've seen over the past few years, these trends will likely continue pushing the boundaries of safety, ethics, and common sense, posing significant risks to our youth and society at large. One possible trend we might see is the extreme diet challenge, where users attempt to survive on dangerously low-calorie diets for extended periods, all in the name of health or body goals. Given the rise of body image-focused content, this could easily spiral into a widespread issue, leading to malnutrition, eating disorders, and potentially fatal health complications. Are we prepared to confront a trend that encourages our children to starve themselves for the sake of fleeting online validation? Another prediction for 2025 could be the Urban Explorer Challenge, where participants break into abandoned or restricted areas to capture footage for clout. While urban exploration has always held a certain allure, its rise on TikTok could lead to a significant increase in illegal activities, injuries, and even deaths, as young people take greater risks to stand out. What happens when our children equate breaking the law with gaining followers? We might also see a resurgence of substance-related challenges, such as the Synthetic Highs Challenge, where users experiment with dangerous legal alternatives to common illegal drugs. These challenges could promote the use of substances that are not well understood, leading to unpredictable and often lethal consequences. How can we combat a trend that encourages our children to turn their bodies into chemical laboratories? The Extreme Pranking Challenge could take pranks to new, dangerous levels, where participants deliberately cause harm or distress to others for the sake of viral content. This could result in serious injuries, psychological trauma, and even fatalities, not to mention the legal ramifications for those involved. How do we address a culture where inflicting pain and fear becomes a form of entertainment? As we dive deeper into the world of TikTok, it's not just the highly publicized challenges that pose a threat. There are several underrated trends that have quietly gained traction, slipping under the radar of many parents and guardians. These trends may not have made headlines, but they are no less dangerous, and perhaps even more insidious because of their subtlety. Take, for example, the Silencing Self Challenge. This trend encourages users, often young girls, to go an entire day without speaking, communicating only through gestures or writing. While it may sound harmless, the underlying message is deeply concerning. This challenge glorifies silence and submission, potentially reinforcing harmful gender stereotypes. It begs the question, are our daughters being taught that their voices don't matter? Another understated yet disturbing trend is the Pain Endurance Challenge. Participants subject themselves to varying degrees of physical pain. Anything from holding ice cubes in their hands until it burns to pressing their arms against hot surfaces. to see who can endure the longest. This trend is a dangerous game of endurance, one that not only risks physical injury but also desensitizes participants to harm and self-inflicted pain. How many of our children are engaging in this self-destructive behavior right under our noses, all for the sake of proving their toughness online? Consider also the isolation challenge, where users isolate themselves from friends and family for as long as possible, documenting their experience online. While some may argue it's a social experiment, the mental health implications are profound. In an age where loneliness and depression are on the rise, especially among young people, this challenge could exacerbate feelings of isolation and alienation. How do we address a trend that encourages our children to disconnect from the very support systems they need the most? Then there's the calorie burn race, where users compete to see who can burn the most calories in a single day, often through excessive exercise and unhealthy fasting. This trend is a ticking time bomb for eating disorders and body dysmorphia, as it glorifies extreme weight loss and physical exertion. Are we watching our children starve themselves and push their bodies to the brink, all for a fleeting sense of accomplishment and social media recognition? Lastly, the invisible disability challenge has emerged, where users fake symptoms of disabilities like blindness or deafness to gain attention and sympathy. This trend is not only disrespectful, but also deeply harmful, trivializing the real struggles of those with disabilities. How many of our children are participating in this thoughtless trend, unknowingly perpetuating harmful stereotypes and mocking those who genuinely suffer? These underrated trends may not be grabbing headlines, but they are silently weaving their way into the lives of our children, normalizing behaviors that are anything but normal. As parents, educators, and responsible adults, we must ask ourselves, are we paying enough attention to the subtle dangers lurking within our children's screens? How many more challenges are they engaging in that we know nothing about? And most importantly, how do we protect them from a digital world that often rewards the most dangerous behaviors with the most attention? Lastly, the Dare to Die challenge is a terrifying possibility, where users engage in increasingly life-threatening stunts, all in the name of outdoing each other. This could range from dangerous jumps to reckless driving and more. Given the tragic outcomes of similar challenges in the past, the potential for widespread loss of life is all too real. Are we ready to face the grim reality of a trend that makes death a game? Parents, educators, and society as a whole must be on high alert as we head into 2025. The trends we've seen on TikTok are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger, more disturbing pattern that exploits the vulnerabilities of young people. The platform's reach is vast, and its influence is powerful. America, it's time to take a stand. These challenges are not just harmless fun, they are a symptom of a deeper issue. Our children are crying out for help, and it's our responsibility to answer that call. How many more lives need to be destroyed before we wake up to the reality of what's happening on TikTok? The question is not whether these trends will continue. They will. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Or, what can we do about it? Do you think the platform is responsible for this, or are we? Or is it a shared responsibility? Think, subscribe, share, like, and comment.